Henry Cavill is having a great time with this faction focus. He really likes Custodes. In between filming all the TV shows and films, he has painted his own Custodes models in gold with silver trim. A nice look, and different to the way others paint them by just slapping on gold and then dabbing them with a thick brush full of brown wash. His Instagram has quite a lot of positive comments regarding his painting efforts, even if he's quite modest about them himself. The Custodes are the personal guard of the Emperor and took part in the Great Crusade to liberate, in quotation marks, the galaxy of alien life and unite the disparate parts of humanity. After the Emperor's son Horus had a bit of a wobble and decided to start a civil war, the Custodes guarded the Emperor's palace, which I think canonically stretches across the Himalayas in Asia. The Custodes remained on Earth, Terra, until Gilliman came back, and then they started getting out fighting in the galaxy again. The Custodes are a super elite army with not a lot of models, and they benefit from having some Imperial allies just to have someone hold back objectives while they get stuck in. Then again, the amount of times I've dropped Raptor squads onto the Custodes deployment zone and been foiled by just one Custodes standing at the back, it's more than once. The Sisters of Silence are, well, they don't talk, so we don't know that much about them. But they support the Custodes, and in 10th edition, they are a fully integrated part of the Custodes Codex. They have anti-psycho abilities, and are quite a bit cheaper than a Custodes, playing a lot like a tough battle sister. Mr. Henry Cavill has said that he considers the Custodes to be the hardest army to play.
My first question for you, what Warhammer 40k army would Sherlock play and why?
That's a great question. He would play... I'm trying to think of the most complex one. And I don't know what the Votan are like. Are they a complex army? I haven't read their codex yet.
I'm not sure. My coworker came with those questions, so I'm not versed in Warhammer.
Okay, Custodes, because it's a low body count, but really requires some finesse. You've got to use each piece properly and carefully. And so maybe them. I'd be very interested to hear what your coworker thinks about that answer. Are they behind the screen or anything?
Well, my community was asked the same thing not too long ago and said it was Gene Stealer Cult, the army I play, among others. And if you didn't recognize the part-finished model I used in that poll, it was Mr. Cavill's. And the poll was all a ruse to get people to declare me smarter than Henry Cavill, just not richer or as popular. Successful? Well, that's relative. I have painted more models than him and have more armies, so winning? Henry Cavill thinks Custodes are a difficult army for the more experienced player. I would go the other way entirely and say that Custodes are a great beginner army and pretty easy for people to play. They do have a low model count, so you have to worry about dropping a couple of expensive models on objectives when they should be killing things, but hey, could be worse. Could be Imperial Knights with even fewer models, and I provided my tactics for them in this video, which is linked at the end, assuming you are not overeager and can wait a little bit longer until the end of the video. Warhammer is expensive. You need Henry Cavill's paycheck to afford to buy an army. With Custodes, you can get your first 1,000 points to play the smallest normal games of 40k that Games Workshop allows, in this box called Combat Patrol, which also allows you to play the even smaller Combat Patrol game mode. The Combat Patrol box has about 750 points in it, and is somehow balanced against the Imperial Guard Combat Patrol when the Custodes are bringing twice the points. The Combat Patrol rules are going to have either some powered down, sleepy, hungover Custodes, or some very angry guardsmen. Custodes are the best army to buy, pound to points, and in 10th edition, each Custodes is expected to be about 50 points. Normally, a full squad of models is around 50 points. As for playstyle, it can have nuance, but new players can't go far wrong with it. Point Custodes at the enemy on the objective, attack the enemy on the objective, stay there, win the game. So I suppose I should talk a little bit about the faction focus of today, the Custodes, and not just the man who has painted some. The army rule allows the Emperor's finest to adopt a martial cap. Martial stance. As with the other factions we have seen, the list of options is reduced or changed. The stance you want is chosen in the fight phase, locking the Custodes to be a very combat-oriented army. There are no other options to advance faster or shoot more. The stance you choose applies to all your units. With this rule, you aren't choosing a different stance for each model or unit. If you are facing a lot of orc attacks, the top stance is recommended to avoid their attacks, but to fight monsters, then I would choose Rendax. Sounds like I'm sponsored by some kind of toothpaste. I'm not sponsored. The Custodes have incredibly tough armor, but their weakness was always psychic powers, no matter how many Sisters of Silence you had. The Aegis of the Emperor Detachment counters this quite nicely, and gives a 4+ feel no pain against mortal wounds. Remember that weapons with the devastating wounds ability cause mortal wounds, so this works against more than just psychic powers. The units the Custodes have in 10th edition are noticeably toned down. While in 9th edition the Sisters of Silence were unaffected by any psychic powers, now they're only unaffected 2/3 of the time. Do note that there are no debuff psychic powers being mentioned, only buffs to the unit the Psyker is in, or as direct damage to enemies. The Sisters don't have any kind of anti-psychic aura, and their bonus is only to their own relatively weak attacks. They also don't benefit from the martial stances. The Allarus Custodians have a much lower leadership. They have dropped from leadership 11 to leadership 6+. That is only a bit above average. I know leadership has been reworked, but I was expecting 4+ or 5+. So when I was dismissing the Tyrannid Shadow and the Warp ability, the Chaos Knights, Harbingers of Dread, and whatever the Dark Eldar have going on, I was not expecting the Fearless Elite to be less than fearless. It seems that even the no fear Space Marines will be made aware of the existence of fear. The Terminators are pretty chunky murder blocks, but they don't have that many attacks, and their Misericordia does not have extra attacks. So it is the knife or the axe. I suppose you could choose the Misericordia to fight hordes of little things where one extra attack would matter. They're still horrendous to shift, more so than the Death Guard certainly. A toughness 7 is higher than Abaddon, the leader of the Chaos faction, and the 2+ save and the 4+ invulnerable save remain. And even if they do die, to something very world-ending, you can bring one back with the Vigilant ending. What we don't know is the squad size. Will splitting them up so that there are squads of 1 still be an option? Otherwise, groups of 3 will be expensive. And if their normal squad size is 1, unlikely, you could only take 3 in your army. The most interesting rule for them is From Golden Light, that lets you teleport at the end of your opponent's turn. This is how I think off-the-board, on-the-board rules should work, so you don't lose a turn of use. Expect this for other units like Swooping Hawks, Sneaky Genestealer Cult, and Deathwatch teams that have a Terminator. I am now going to use one such once per game ability to teleport down to Nottingham. I'm pretty sure that right now Henry Cavill is inside Warhammer World. I'm just outside. I'm gonna ask him about his Custodes when he comes out. He is gonna come out the front entrance, right? It's so cold.